It's great to be here today. I want to firstly thank Marcos again for the organization of Link conference, and Matua Robert and Sérgio in Brazil. Abraço aí, Sérgio. Thank you for organizing this great conference that we have, and now coming up to, I think, the 5th year of Link Practice Led in the Global South. Uma saudação para todos e todas as colegas brasileiras, brasileiros. É muito bom estar aqui com vocês hoje e poder compartilhar a minha pesquisa e o meu projeto. Um alô aí e um obrigado também para os tradutores, Tiago, todo o pessoal da organização aí no Brasil. Well, I think we're ready to go. I just saw Matua Robert there popping up. Tenakwe Matua. I think we're ready to go now. All the formalities has been done. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. I hope everything works here. We go up here. So, Thiago, is everything okay on your end?
Yes, perfect.
Thank you. So I'm going to take you through a photographic journey today, exploring notions of memory, diaspora, and photography. So I'll be presenting this paper, this presentation titled Memórias e Devaneios, Fotografia, Memória e Diáspora, or Memories and Reveries, Photography, Memory, and Diaspora. As Marcos introduced, my name is Rodrigo Hill. I'm a lecturer at Screen and Media at Te Kuratoi School of Arts at Waikato University in Kirikiriroa, Hamilton, Aotearoa, New Zealand. And I'm originally from Rio Grande do Sul, and I moved to Aotearoa 16 years ago, but I actually left Brazil in the early 2000s. So I'm going to open up with this photograph here on the front page, which is me, my dad, me papá, ou meu papai, and me mamá, e minha mamãe. And we were at the south coast of Brazil on probably one of my first holidays on the beach. And I think I was probably 2 years old. That was in the early 80s. So to introduce this project, I'm sort of approaching a diaspora as a form of identity. And I'm looking at the intersection of nostalgia, diaspora, photography, and the archive. I'm going to take you through 2 different approaches or projects. And the first one is titled The Harbor. And the second one, which is kind of the main component of this presentation, is my latest project called Desacoplado, Memórias e Devaneios, or in English, this will be Displacement, Memories and Reveries. So this project was exhibited at the Auckland Museum recently as part of a big exhibition about Brazilian artists, and I'll talk about that soon. So I'm looking at diaspora as a kind of form of cultural dispersal or displacement, and or a movement of individuals between countries, sometimes out of necessity or out of choice. In my personal case, was out of choice. So I'm drawing on key ideas from mainly 3 theorists here, starting with Stuart Hall. I think it's probably impossible to not talk about Stuart Hall when we're talking about diaspora or diaspora in multicultural identities. So Hall was one of the key theorists in this field, and he approached diaspora as a concept that is surrounded by a sense of loss and connection. So where there's this tension between the past and the present. So I take this idea and perhaps kind of reconceptualize diaspora as a space in between this kind of idea of losing and being connected to place or past events or places. Taking it to places, Nigel Shift proposes that place and affect can evoke emotional responses and shape our senses of belonging or alienation within that space. So if we combine that, the notion of Hall's ideas and Nigel's drifts, there's an interesting intersection here. And then combining with Svetlana Boym, then looking at nostalgia more specifically as a feeling of loss and, again, displacement. So moving along, so this was the first project, which kind of goes back 10 years ago. I photographed this project in 2012, 2013, and the title is The Harbor. And the harbor serves as a metaphor for, again, this idea of coming and going, losing or connecting. So this kind of space in between. It was kind of my approach was, more underpinned by documentary photography, more specifically social documentary, and again, the notions of diaspora, migration, and multicultural identities. This project was a little different because I did a lot of portraits, and I'm going to show you 2 examples next. And at that time, in 2013, I was working on the present time, but trying to evoke a sense of nostalgia and memory through and with and in the photographs. So this is one of the portraits from the project. It's a family from the United States. And the project was located in my hometown here where I live in Aotearoa, which is Whaingaroa, Raglan. And it's a small village on the west coast, on the North Island. And it's incredibly actually multicultural. There's people from all over the world here. And this family is a family of medical doctors. And they lived in Raglan for a number of years. And I think this notion of migration, it's interesting here, and kind of what Hall says on the side, this quote from Stuart Hall, that the trouble is that the instant one learns to be an immigrant, one recognized one cannot be an immigrant any longer. So it's not an attainable place to be. So again, this idea of kind of being in this space of not here or not there, culturally, psychologically, and physically as well. This next portrait is from a young couple, and this again was photographed in Raglan. And this location here doesn't exist anymore. They built a big house on this location, unfortunately, but at the time it was this beautiful lily. We call it lily flowers, a field of lily flowers here. And with this, with most of the participants, I was trying to collaborate with them and kind of prompt them to enter a psychological state connected to diaspora and this idea of, again, loss and connection. So trying to prompt them psychologically to kind of get into that space for the photographs. I also work with more kind of metaphorical images, like the harbor itself. In Raglan, we have a big harbor. And again, the harbor was a good, useful metaphor for this idea of coming and going, or space in between. And then also scenes around the town that could evoke foreigner kind of spaces or places, like the scene here that could be in Japan, but it's actually in New Zealand. So this kind of interesting interplay of placement, displacement. Then moving along to Desacoplado, Memórias e Devaneios, so in English, Displacement, Memories, and Reveries. So this is the main kind of component or aspect of this presentation, which this project was part of a group exhibition called Toró é Tudo Tanto. It's also much. And that was exhibited at the Auckland Museum at the Taonga Community Hub space or gallery. So this gallery offers the opportunity for immigrants or artists from different countries to have shows based on their nationality. So this year we had this show that was covering all Brazilian artists or art about Brazil. And the exhibition ran from March to October to this year. And there was a range of artists involved with covering a range of different practices and disciplines. And I just want to put a little thank you note here for Janaína and Lee Palace, and you probably met Janaína earlier this morning or tonight. A little thank you note for the great job they did with the curation and organizing the event and the exhibition. So moving along, so the creative process. So this is kind of the main point about this presentation is the creative process, or my creative process and the ways I've approached these projects. Specifically for the Auckland Museum project, I was working through my personal archive of photographs and looking back 20 years, like back in time, since the period that I left Brazil for the first time. I approached the archive or archival imagery as a photographic act in itself. So I wasn't deliberately making new photographs, but I was reinterpreting, relooking, revisiting archival imagery, such as family album photographs, snapshots or everyday photography that I did throughout the last 20 years, or personal archival imagery as well. And those covered my experiences as an immigrant in Aotearoa and in Brazil. And some of you may feel that, like, every time, say, after you leave Brazil, every time you go back, it's like you're almost like an immigrant in your own country, but you're not. You're actually Brazilian. But there's this kind of interesting kind of interplay of feelings, emotions, and responses. I'll talk about picture framing here next, but and the ways I approached picture framing as a creative method or kind of mode of representation in the final photography installation that was displayed in the gallery at the museum. On the right here, you've probably seen, in the Chilenos will probably recognize the Andes or the Andes here on this photograph, and that was taken from the plane on my phone at the time. I think I had a iPhone 4 or something back in the day. And but to me personally, every time we fly back to Brazil or South America, or we fly to Aotearoa from Brazil, we go over the Andes. Like, we always stop in Chile, and I actually refuse going via the United States. So when that moment that we're flying over the Andes, it's quite a big moment for me personally, because that's when you're approaching motherland. You know, you're getting closer. It's a long way from Aotearoa to Brazil. We crossed the Pacific on this big journey in an airplane for 12 hours. So it's a significant moment personally when we approach the Andes, or Los Andes, and we looked from above, and it's a magnificent sight, as you can see. So anyway, this is my homenaje a Los Andes. Moving along, so this project for the museum had different stages, and I've actually started working with this idea of diaspora and displacement a long time ago, as I mentioned. So, and on my website, I put together a small collection of images and with this work called Desacoplado. So this series that is titled Desacoplado, or Displaced, sort of serves as a prequel for the main project that was exhibited at the museum. And this idea or term desacoplado in Portuguese, which may translate to displaced or dislodged, first time I heard that was in a session with my psychologist in Brazil, when I was actually living there briefly for a couple of years. And she said, "Oh, you look a little bit desacoplado," you know. I was like, "Oh, okay, well, that's interesting." And to approach this creatively as well was an interesting kind of territory. And I suddenly realized, well, this is what this is about, you know. So then I started to explore that kind of term and idea further. So as I said, that initial collection of images that is on my website serves as a kind of warm-up for this project. So I started off looking at the photographs digitally on the screen. And the way I work is I make collections of images that I look through on the computer. And From those, I make smaller collections that I print them like in test prints, cheap photographic prints. And then I start playing with those prints, testing sequences, how the images work with each other, how they behave, what the feel I get from that collection. So I combined, again, the archival photographs that I had with me printed with this new kind of revisited collection of photographs. So picture framing was useful when I got down to the last 18 photographs that I thought, well, this is the final images. I started to work with picture framers in a way to give the image another sense of meaning and reinforce the nostalgic kind of diasporic or memory aspect in the images and in the project. So I work in collaboration with a framing house here in Karakia, which is actually called Framing House. And we try to convey the sense of memory and nostalgia with the framing and the framing choices. And also the framing in itself was useful to establish connections between the photographs in the installation and the color of the mat boards, etc. Just briefly, this image here is a view from the inside of my grandfather's Fusca. It's a 1968 model, and every time I go to Brazil, I have the pleasure to drive this car around. This is a view from my grandmother's house, and this is 2019, the last time I went to Brazil, and that's our Christmas dinner table on Christmas Eve, the 24th of December. This photograph is a kind of quite an old image, probably goes back 20 years in time. It was shot on film, and it was printed manually in color, obviously, and I used to do a lot of those test prints in the past for my work. So I would get test prints from the lab and to then enlarge the images bigger or whatever later. So I carried some of those test prints with me, and I have them with me at home. And this one made the final collection. This is a view of Praça da Matriz in Porto Alegre, my hometown. And this is a little scene from my grandmother's bed after she woke up. And I really like this image. You know, there's some sweetness to it. And the framing here, we also try to keep this really subtle color in the frames itself. They were hand painted to match the mat board color. And then this one is a banana flower, which is quite common in Brazil, a banana tree flower. And the strategy here was to use a kind of rounded mat board to kind of have this retro kind of antique look to the photograph. So the actual installation then started the process, and my first idea was to frame all the pictures in one frame, like this example on the left, but I thought this would be too confined and too tight for the images. So I moved on from that, and looking around my home, I realized, well, this is, you know, we have this at home, this a wall with lots of photographs pinned on it with, you know, family photos, whatever, snapshot photographs, whatever. So from looking at that, and I kind of thought, well, some families, you know, do have photographs on the wall like that or on the fridge. So this can actually be a really interesting model to apply to the installation of the photographs in the gallery. So then I started to play with now the framed pictures and work through the ordering and sequential kind of placement of the photographs to be displayed on the wall. So the images, then the final installation, the images had numbers on them, which were kind of connected to, so they had matching titles with numbers. So each photograph was numbered and had a matching title attached to it. So this, again, gave the photographs another layer of meaning combined with the picture framing and the actual photographs. So that's kind of an interesting kind of package conceptually, and the combination of these titles with the framing and the imagery and the way that were displayed in the gallery. Trying to evoke again, you know, this idea of memory, nostalgia, place displacement, and obviously, you know, this kind of diasporic kind of identity or feel to the collection. Most of the images, though, were photographed in Brazil. This was a strategic and deliberate decision I made to have only photographs from Brazil in the collection to reinforce the nostalgia and memory in the work. And this was the final installation here on the wall, the 18 photographs numbered and installed. And I want to thank the museum team for doing a great job, because we did this by FaceTime, and I supplied the museum with a draw plan for the way that I envisioned the photographs to be placed on the wall, and they did a great job. So I'm very thankful for that. Lastly, thank you for the School of Arts at Te Toi here at the University of Waikato for funding this project. My email is there if you want to ask any questions. Thank you again, Marcos, and kia ora, obrigado. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Obrigado, Rodrigo. Muito obrigado, Rodrigo. Rodrigo, eu queria fazer uma questão para você. Como fotógrafo que trabalha com paisagem, como é que foi o seu... Eu sei que você trabalha com a questão de placemaking, trabalha com uma série de projetos aí que estão aí nessa região do Waikato, King Country, para nós aqui na Nova Zelândia. E como é que é esse relacionamento da epistemologia maori com o seu trabalho hoje? Como é que isso aconteceu? Como é que isso se iniciou? E talvez, se você quiser falar um pouco do trabalho que você faz com o Tom Roa, e send my best to him as well. Nós estávamos falando em português, não foi isso?
Mais ou menos. I think so. I don't even know now. Yeah, but I got your question.
Yeah, I'm so sorry for the audience at this stage, already confusing a little bit here. Rodrigo, I know that you work in your work with some Maori epistemology, some Maori knowledge, and there's placemaking, but there is a very significant call from Maori epistemologists, and I know you work with a Maori scholar, Tom Roa. So how this is started, how this is happened, how you onboard Mautauranga Maori, Tikanga Maori into your work, how this came to life?
Okay, so this project obviously didn't have at first any connection with Maori, Mautauranga Maori, or Tikanga Maori. So this is research that that I did in parallel, and it's quite a personal body of work that I've been working on for the past 20 years. So this is one thing. Now, the work that I have with Maori, Mautauranga Maori, is I probably started that line of work in 2016 with Indigenous epistemologies, and at that time there was a shift in my approach to photography, which I started to looking at more place and the relationship of photography in place, which is different than this one here. There is a little bit of that kind of crossover, but more specifically, and as part of my PhD research, I started to look at the relationship of photography in place, and then applied at that time to the Waikato River in Hamilton. I think any photographer or artist doing research around place in Aotearoa needs to engage and observe and follow Tikanga Maori protocols, because this is, we're on Maori land first and foremost. So we need to engage with Maori scholars, Maori communities, iwi, and individuals to be able to conduct such research that is connected to especially specific places such as the Waikato River, and now this project that I've been doing with Mata Tom Roa, or Professor Tom Roa here from the Waikato University. So I'm just privileged and lucky to have this opportunity to be working alongside Tom Roa and other colleagues and other Maori colleagues in doing this project, and I wouldn't do it otherwise. And I'm very grateful to have the support of Waikato Maniapoto in doing this project as well. which now, like your question is incredibly timely, Marcos, because we're on a time period now that's going to get into some sort of, I don't know what we're going to face ahead of us. So projects like this one, and like many other, and like Aotearoa Williams, they're going to gain more significance than ever, I believe. And if there's something I can do to help uphold and be part of this movement, I'll be very grateful to come on board and be part of it. And I'll be doing as much as I can with photography to be able to bring stories and Matauranga Maori to the surface.
Thank you very much, Rodrigo. Much appreciate. Thank you for your time, your presentation. I really like your work. I'm a great fan. So thank you for your presentation. Send our best regards for our loved colleagues at Waikato, and we will see you guys tomorrow again. So as coming to a closure for this first day of Link, before I ask Matua Robert to make the closing Karakia, I want to thank you everyone that was here, listened to the presentations. I want to thank you, Tatiana, Janaína, Priscila, Herbert, Rodrigo, for sharing your ideas. You know, we do this in our free time. We do this because the research we do, it's in our hearts, in our minds, but also in our hearts, are the things we believe is important. I want to thank you, AUT, for supporting the organization of Link for its 5th time. It's entirely paid by AUT. So to have translators and have all this structure, we are very pleased to have AUT support in doing that. So remember that tomorrow we start again at 8 a.m. in the morning in Aotearoa. It's 4 p.m. in Brazil and South America, in some parts of South America. Please join us. It's a pleasure to have you all here. We think the promotion of these ideas can literally change the scenario, the landscape where indigenous epistemologies can be considered and where networks south to south are more evidenced. So it brings new epistemologies instead of only Western epistemologies. We can see how rich are these epistemologies that we discussed here today. So thank you all, and thank you, Robert, for your kind mentorship throughout all these years, your protection and your guidance.
Thank you for such dynamic presentations. I consider your presentations from Latin America to be the creme de la creme of the research that's coming up. I was always so thrilled to learn so many new ideas that have come out of Latin America. So I just want to thank you all for presenting today, and I know that this research is groundbreaking, and I'm going to close with a karakia. Part of my karakia is to invoke the gods' protections, because under such difficult political times we are facing at the moment, both globally and actually, frankly, I agree with you, Rodrigo, with what's happening in our own country, where Māori are becoming marginalized and invisibilized. So I am going to invoke and ask our gods for protection, and hope, and earnestly hope, that Donald Trump does not get a second term in government, because he's the most dangerous person in the world, in my view, apart from those lunatics who are provoking hostilities and wars from Russia. So I'm going to close our kōrero today in our presentation with a karakia, to bring our thoughts together and to hope for peace in the world and for love amongst us all. Kia pure e tātou i ngā haumaiangiangi a tāwhiri mātea. Kia taua whitia tātou i ngā haumaru a tāne whakapiripiri. Kia tauiho te AIO a rongo hirea ki runga i a tātou katoa. Mauri tū, mauri tapu, mauri ora ki a tātou. Whāno, haramai te toki, haumi e, hui e, tāiki e. Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora everyone. We'll see everyone tomorrow.